Good evening, TDN listeners and viewers, and of course, my audience of This Week in Interview. Welcome to another program of This Week in Interview on TDN Radio with your host and guide, Anthony Drago. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. And as I always say, this Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time is really the highlight of my week. I look forward to that time that I spend. If you get to do an hour or so, and here we are again. So grab your favorite drink as usual. I want you to share the link, invite somebody to join us. We have some important business to talk about, and tonight is no exception. So I'm not going to waste more time. Grab your water, grab your juice, whatever your favorite beverage is, and come right back. We'll be starting off with a wonderful conversation with my guest, Mr. Alvin Thomas. All right, I hope you had a chance to grab your water or whatever your favorite drink of the moment is. Before we get going, let me just wish you, those of you who are in North America and in the US actually, who's celebrating Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving to you. If you that's not what you celebrate, well, whatever it is you have, if you have tomorrow off, enjoy that. But it's Thanksgiving. We always have something that we should feel grateful for. And so let's take the opportunity to give thanks, and to count the blessings and those people and those things that we think are extra important. Count them twice and count them three times, because it's Thanksgiving time. Those of you who join us, my regular listeners who come back every week, a very special welcome to you tonight. And if tonight is the first time that you're listening to This Week in Interview, I want to tell you welcome. We always appreciate honest feedback, and there's nothing like fresh airs to give us some really great feedback. So we look forward to you enjoying the program and becoming a regular listener as well. Our sister station, RVR Jams Radio, carries This Weekend Interview live on DigiPlay Channel 59. Good night to you if you're listening to us in Dominica on the Nature Island. So Thursday night, greetings. Wednesday night, greetings to you. And of course, Radio SBE Online in the Toronto market, SBE Online Radio. They carry This Weekend Interview live as well. Good evening to you if you're listening to us via that medium. Wherever you're listening to us, I hope that you make yourself comfortable. Let us share the live. You can hear us on This Weekend Interview Facebook page, TDN Radio Facebook page, as well as TDNTV.net. If you cannot watch us because you're driving or because you are otherwise engaged visually, you can listen to us on TDNRadio.net. If you get us on YouTube or on Instagram or on Facebook, give us a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you can know when we're on. For those of you who are fans of Dissect is back on air, so make sure you tune in for that. And all the other great programming that we have on TDN Radio. And then we're talking about Thanksgiving, and I said if there's anything in your life that you're extra grateful for, you count it twice. So we're talking about Dominica, and those of us who are from Dominica, I'm sure we would count Dominica as a blessing 4 and 5 and 10 times, because it is such a gem, with lots of gifts and just a whole lot of blessings that the citizens of Dominica enjoy. And so because of that, and because we are so grateful for the blessing that Dominica is, when we heard of the revelations that were made about the sale of Dominican passports and the lack of accountability and the opaqueness that surrounds that program, we decided to pay attention to it. And this is, I think, our fourth program right now, where we're talking about Passportgate. And in Passportgate, what we mean is that it is reported that Dominica has sold 34,500 passports in the last few years, with an average price of 100,000 US dollars. That works out to be quite a few billion US dollars. And so we were excited, we are excited that Dominica has the ability to generate that kind of revenue. But then we are disappointed, very disappointed, that there's not the accountability that should go with the handling of money that belongs to the public. And so we decided to do a Passportgate initiative whereby we are demanding some kind of accountability, and we are staying on that topic until we get answers. And so I want to welcome my guest, Mr. Alvin Thomas. He's back with us. He's not he's home people now. I don't know why I'm referring to him as a guest. Um, to talk to us about tonight, we're going to talk about the debt. Because you wouldn't believe, would you believe that in the time of abundance, where the country is generating billions of dollars in revenue, our national debt is way ballooning, and it's even more than our GDP. Last report is that it was 104% of GDP. And on top of that, we heard new loans that are being applied for. We heard some, I think it's $100 million from the Saudi Arabia for the improvement of Roseau. So we're asking where all this money is going. Where is this money spent? Our people are still dying from minor medical conditions. Where is that money going to? So I want you to stay tuned with us. Give a warm welcome to Alvin. Alvin, welcome.
Yeah, I'm hearing some noise in the
I
background.
hearing some noise. Sam, can you mute your mic? Yeah. So yeah,
Okay.
Alvin, welcome to this weekend interview. It's great to have you.
Yes, Tony. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me again on another such program, this weekend interview. It's always a pleasure, man, to come on board and to have a conversation on the issues that affect our lives as individual. And you know, as you yourself a former JCs, and I myself a JCI senator, I'm just I'm a rank ahead of you. We have this tenet in our creed that says service to humanity is the best work of life. And that is basically what we're doing. We are providing service to humanity in what we do through this program, and as well as what all of our other brothers and sisters are currently doing on island. So it's
Right.
always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to come on board and to share the little knowledge that I have with you and with the guests. So I'm looking forward to that this evening as well. Yes, you mentioned debt, Tony.
Before
And
you jump into it, Alvin,
sure,
before you jump into it, I got a little bit of feedback when
sure.
I promoted the program tonight. People say, guys, you guys don't tired talk about the same thing. Why you come back and hop on the same
Somebody said
topic and
that.
whatnot? People say that. So I want us to spend not
Oh,
long, just
okay.
5 minutes, maybe not even 5 minutes. Just why do you think it's important that you spend your time, you do the research, um, and then you come back and spend time with me and we talk about these issues. Let us clear the air a little bit. So in case people are thinking, oh, not Passportgate again, why are these guys wasting time? It doesn't seem to go nowhere. It doesn't seem to have any traction. Why are we, in your mind, why do you come back? Why do you stay on
Well,
this topic? Why is it
well,
important?
well. I think that's a good question to ask, Tony. I think it's a relevant question. And I would simply say, though, that an informed person, a person with knowledge and information, can make a better decision, a judgment of not just him or herself, but about their country. At the end of the day, you even in a home, you're not able effectively to make a decision in the absence of information. So you got two kids in the house. One comes to you and say, "Hey, daddy, so did what? Dada one did what?" Then what you do as a parent is to get the information. Okay, what happened, where it happened, how it happened, and they both present you with their story or their case. And then from that, you can come to a conclusion or decision. The same happens even in the judicial system. You hit somebody, somebody hit you back, you end up in front of the judge. Then either by yourself or with an attorney is going to say, well, this is what happened. Present your case, as it were. And
Right.
on the basis of that only will the judge be able to make a decision and to say, well, hey, based on what I've heard, this is what I think. So similarly, we come back every week to point out the information. And Tony, I've said so on your program already. I'll be happy to engage anyone who wants to engage me in a conversation. In other words,
Right.
if I come here one night and I presented some information or some stats or some thing that is wrong, and somebody wants to come back and say, hey, Alvin, I think what you said was inaccurate. If it in fact was accurate, I am prepared to accept. And secondly, I'm also prepared to discuss it, to discuss the positions that we put forward.
Right.
So,
Right.
in all of that, having said all of that, I think it is so important that as a country, and the focus in most times would be on Dominica, that we are knowledgeable, we are informed. That way, we can make informed decision, and that is
Right.
also extends to the whole question of a democracy. That's what democracy is all about. It's not just going and vote one day. You put a government in office, and after that, it's wait until the next 5 years. You have to be engaged. The way you get engaged is to inform yourself. The way you get engaged as well is to take action. You can only take action if you are armed yourself with the information in order to take action. So, in a nutshell, I would say this is the purpose of that. It may sound a bit awesome, and so yeah, like everything else. I mean, we get up every morning and we brush our teeth every day, don't we? We brush
Yeah,
our
but
teeth every day,
yeah,
so
but
we put
I mean, I
clothes on
wouldn't
us
even
every day.
I would not even
So
compare it to that. I mean, I would compare it to we all most of us have a retirement plan. We have Social Security,
yeah,
um, and we put money there and expect and we pay people to manage it for us, to manage our affairs. And so we should be interested in how that money is managed, how it is spent, how it is invested, and our how when we expect to get that money to benefit us, that we can see the benefit. And so to say that, well, you're talking about the same thing every time, I think people should be happy that we are staying with it until we get the answers that we are seeking, because the answers we are seeking is for them, for us as well, because we are citizens of the country, but it's for all of us, because it's not Alvin's money, it's not my money, it's all of us money. And so why would we stop? So if you belong to a credit union and you go to an annual general meeting at the credit union, or you're in a cooperative and you go to a meeting of the cooperative, and $10,000 is unaccounted for, you ask about it, and the chairman or the manager of the credit union, we spend the money, whatever, whatever. And you say, well, can I see the books and whatnot? And he blow you off again. So you will just go about your business and say, okay, I guess Mr. Thomas know what he's doing and he's the expert. Let him, we trust him, you know. Even if he don't give us the numbers, we trust him. And that is essentially what folks are saying we should do. That the government has access to our money, refuse to give us an account for it, and we should just agree and give up and say, okay.
But not only that, Tony, I think it goes even beyond that, because you and I may not be there, but when that debt is racked up the way it's been racked up, it has to be paid. So guess who's going to be paying for it? Your children and children. So I may
Yep.
be gone in the next 10 years or whatever, but that debt that Dominica owes right now is going to have to be repaid, if not by this current population, but those to come. Because it's a
So,
debt,
so,
like every other
so,
debt. It's like a
so
debt in the family. If
yeah,
if you have a debt, Tony, your wife have a debt, and she dies, and God forbid you may not have insurance or what, that debt is still due. You have to pay it, or the bank may come and take the house and throw you out, or the car, but you still owe that debt. And if you're not there, then maybe your son might end up having to owe the debt, because they're going to say, okay, who's the next in kin? Who's the next person
yeah,
that
as
we
with
can
question.
levy
But
and
but
go
but
to
but
and get that debt?
that's a good segue into our topic tonight, because last week we dealt with comparing Dominica to the other islands who have CBI programs and who do not have CBI programs. Before that, we ask about all the money that's unaccounted for. Is there evidence in Dominica that shows that a significant amount of money has been spent on infrastructure, on programs, on institutions that improve the lives of Dominicans? And before that, we talk about accountability and the need for a fiduciary responsible government to give account to the people. Tonight, we're talking about debt. How is it that in a period of time when the country earned billions of dollars of revenue in passport sales, the debt of the country also rose to record levels that it has never risen before? And at the same time, we're hearing announcements of new loans. So tonight, that's what we're focusing on the debt that the country is racking up, even in a time of tremendous windfall of significant funds. So Alvin, let's talk about debt. And you started nicely. You bring it down to where we can compare it to debt in our family. But we're talking about a national debt. What exactly, when we talk about Dominica's national debt, what are we talking about?
Well, first of all, Tony, let us begin the conversation on the premise that debt of itself is not a bad thing. Okay, debt of itself is not a bad thing. Whether it's from an individual level, institutional level, or an organization, or government level, it's not a bad thing, because you can have what one might refer to as good debt, and you can have what one might refer as bad debt, meaning that you borrowed the money from the bank and you squandered it, or you didn't use it properly. Whereas you could borrow money from the bank, you have a debt, you put in your business, the business generate growth, it generate profits, and therefore you could pay that debt off, pay it down, borrow some more, and keep your business going. So debt of itself on the premise is not a bad thing. Okay. Um, and you ask the reason, and even again from an individual basis and a governmental basis, why am I borrowing this money? Do I need it? Sometimes as individuals we take on debts that we should not take on. We don't need it. As government, we may take on debt to that we don't need. We don't use it. And there has to be a certain level of responsibility with the debt as an individual. So you borrow, if you know, well, okay, you borrow at a certain level, a certain debt you have. Individual, you say, well, you know what, boy, let me work a few additional hours to be able to pay that debt, because I have that commitment now. Let me adjust. Let me do some adjustment in my spending so that I can service that debt. Okay. As it relates to a country now, Dominica in that case, there's even much more wider areas that need to be looked at. So for one, you want to look at the whole question of fiscal policy. What type of fiscal policies are in place that ensures that, you mentioned it a while ago, accountability, transparency, that sort of thing. What sort of trade policies that are in place as it relates to the various sectors of your economy? Because like I said, as an individual, you borrow money and you know you have a loan now, you now have a car note to pay. You may work a few overtime hours, or you may have a second job that you do to help generate some additional income to pay off that debt. Similarly, as a government, your trade policies are important by sectors. So in other words, you borrow, is your agriculture sector improving? That will contribute to your overall growth, for what we refer to as your overall GDP, to contribute to the payment of that debt. Is your tourism sector growing? Is your business sector growing? Are more people seeing Dominica as an attractive place to do business? The more business you have, the more taxes the government collect. Out of the taxes, they could then pay down their debt. Okay? The whole question of how you manage the debt as a government, and we'll get to that in a minute. How is that debt managed? The whole question of growth. Growth, when we speak of your debt to GDP ratio, in other words, how much of your debt in relation to your gross domestic product as a country. So are you producing enough to be able to sustain your debt? The whole question of good governance. Are you running this thing in a good governance manner, meaning that the whole management of the country is being governed with a certain level of transparency? The debt is going in the right place. Some individuals might go to a bank and borrow money, and they say, well, okay, I'm borrowing the money to extend on my house. Okay, put a room on my house. Guess what? They take the money and they go, maybe some guy go run some woman. They take the money, they go do something else. So is the government borrowing money, and then that money is being used in a very corrupt way, giving their supporters? Are we borrowing the money now, and that's the same money that paying for folks to fly from the diaspora into Dominica to vote? Are we borrowing that money to do all these shenanigans? So all of these are just some of the areas that are important when it comes to the whole question of debt management and debt.
So let me jump in there for a minute, Alvin,
Sure.
and to bring this into perspective. Okay, you as an individual, as a family, as a business, as a country, there are certain things that you need to do that cost a lot of money. You need to buy a house, you need to buy a car, you need to build a hospital, you need to build a school. So if you have that money in your account, you may not need to borrow. You may decide, I have that money, I have $10 million in the bank, I need $2 million to build a school. You go to the $10 million, you take two out of it, and you build a school. So you do that without debt. That is not always practical, because your money is generated. Let us say you have salaries to pay and all kind of other expenses, so you cannot use that money, all of that money, to build a school. So you say, okay, I will borrow the money and plan to pay it off over 10 years. So instead of taking $2 million now, that's going to put me in a crunch and I come to pay people for Christmas, I only have to pay back $50,000, $20,000 at a time. And that is why countries go into debt. And so the reason why I'm raising it like that, Alvin, is because, for one thing, if we are generating $5 billion US in revenue in that period of time, there's a decision to be made. Do we use from the money we generate to do the work of the country, or do we go to borrow? Because when you go to borrow now, you have to pay back interest. So it's not free money, you have a cost to it. So what I'm hearing you saying is that a government deciding to borrow money on the country. I heard you say a couple of things. When the government decides to go borrow money, one, they have to have a plan of how it's going to pay back that money without putting the citizens under undue stress to pay it back. And two, if that is not the case, the future generations are the ones who are going to be left sadly with that debt. So,
Mm-hmm.
those are the decisions that has to be made. We are generating a lot of money, but we're saving that money because every 5 years or so we get hit by a major hurricane. So we're saving that money so that if a hurricane hits, we have money to help our recovery. Let's say that. So therefore, we are going to go for a loan to build roads, to build whatever, so that we're not spending all our money and then a hurricane comes and we have to go and beg people to help us to recover. You see where
Mm-hmm.
I'm going with that?
Yeah,
It
I'm see
doesn't
where you're
seem
going with
like
that.
as though any of those things are happening. We're generating money, we're borrowing money, and when we have a disaster, we're still begging people to help us to recover from a disaster.
Well, I think it's even worse than that, Tony. It's even worse. I'd give it a third leg. Because put it this way, say you're an individual and we know you're making some good money. Okay? We know you're making some good money. But here it is. For one, um, you're not saving that good money. So you don't have there's nowhere or you can show that the money is being saved, and you're going and you're borrowing you can pay back. So it is not a question whereby you might say, well, okay, they're taking that up that debt, which we should not really take, but we have a reserved. We can show we have a reserve there of so much money. Transparency comes to play there right away.
Right.
So you could say, well, it's like, say, for example, it may not be the smart thing, but you might have a fixed deposit with the bank. So you have a fixed deposit sitting there of 75 grand, getting maybe a 4% interest rate. And you might say, well, you know what? I'm going to do a mortgage. And you might end up taking 100,000 in a mortgage. And you might end up paying 6% or 5% on that mortgage. Now, you could do one or two things. You could say, well, let me take the 75,000, break the fixed deposit. But you might say, no, let me leave that money there. Let me take that loan because it's a long term. It's a 30-year
Mm-hmm.
mortgage. You're paying
Mm-hmm.
back an amount that you feel you can pay. You're working, you're generating income, but you're managing that debt. You see what I'm saying? But in
Right.
our case here, not only that we have that debt, but it's nowhere in our books. We know based on the numbers that have already been put forward in terms of the economic citizenship passports, how much are they likely generating, but nowhere in our books in Dominica, whether it's in the consolidated fund, whether it's in treasury, whether it's in finance, nowhere, Bachelor Bank, nowhere. We can go now and say, hey, we as a government have $3 billion or $1 billion showing up in our account. So I think that makes it even more dangerous. You see what I'm saying? And
Right.
and let me just give you a synopsis. And I'm referencing two director of audits report. And I hope my friend Clarence is listening, the former director of audit. I really want him to listen tonight, or maybe he'll go back and listen after all. But the two most recent reports from the Director of Audit that has been issued was the report ending 30th June 2019 and report ending 30th June 2020. We have not had another report since. So we would have made a report ending 30th June 2021 and I think 2022 because it runs kind of similar to the financial year.
Right.
So the reference I'm making is in relation to June 30th, 2019 and June 30th, 2020. As
Right.
of June 30th, 2019, our public debt stood at $1.1 billion.
$1.1 billion.
1.147827824. That was our public debt. $1.1 billion. 1.147278824. Our listeners can write that down. At the end of June 30th, 2020, our public debt stood at $1.4 billion. 1.417257,157. $1.4
So
billion.
in other words, in that year, we borrowed an
Hold on, I'm
additional
sorry. I'm
$300
sorry.
million.
Don't go yet. Let me make a quick caveat there. We had auditors report up until 21. So we have 2021. So what we don't have now is 21, 22. So let me just clarify that. So we have 2021, and we have 19, 1920, 2021. We don't have 21, 22 yet. Okay, so it is July 1st, 2019 to 30th June 2020, July 1st, 2020 to 30th June 2021. So we do not now have, we're missing July 1st, 2021
right. So let's not
to June 30th, 2022.
Let's not make too much mess with the dates. What you're saying is that at July 2020, the national debt was $1.1 million.
No. At June 2019, end of June 2019, it was 1.1 billion.
So 2019, it was 1.1 billion.
Billion. At the end of June 2020, it was 1.4 billion.
So 2020, it was 1.4 billion. Okay.
And yeah, the bombshell. End of June 2021, it was 1.6 billion.
Right.
So you see the jump there? So it was 1.642 billion in 2020.
So it looks like on average between that period, the government is borrowing an additional $300 million per year.
Yep.
Okay.
So end of 30th June 2021, it was 1.642,716,320 billion dollars, according to the audited report.
Okay.
Now, out of that amount, and I can always validate the year later on, they took what is called overdraft. So you know how an overdraft operates. Those of us individuals that have overdraft, you get an overdraft at the bank. You have a checking account. The bank allows you an overdraft of $5,000 every month to run your business or whatever you get it for. At the end of the month, you pay off the overdraft.
In the interest of time, instead of going, just tell us what's the makeup of the debt. Some is overdraft, some is what, some is what.
Well, the makeup of the debt is for the last number that I gave, the 30th June 2021, you had bonds, which is domestic debt bonds. You had well over $250,000, 258,807,994. That is for bonds. Okay. For treasury bills, you had $32,350,000. For domestic loans, you had $188,461,980. For external debt loans, you had $667,044,535. They had an amount unpaid check there of $84 million. That gives us a total of total central government debt at $1.2 billion. And then you had domestic contingent liabilities, 200 million, 962. And you had external contingent liability, 210 million, 35268. So that gives you a grand total of $1.6 billion. Okay?
Wow.
And I was about to say that you had an overdraft with the bank, National Bank. They had $150 million overdraft. They have raised that overdraft so much. So every month, rather than pay off the overdraft, they keep borrowing against the overdraft. And they converted that overdraft to a loan. Okay? So I can always verify what they converted that to a loan. So now that added to the public debt, when in truth and in fact it should have been an overdraft. Overdraft, you borrow, you pay it off.
Yeah,
So it
overdraft
goes
is a
back to what you're
overdraft is
saying
supposed to be
now
a
earlier.
short term facility.
Exactly, short term.
Right.
But because they could not never bring down that overdraft, they eventually converted it to a loan with the bank. So fiscal irresponsible.
So
Now,
they had an overdraft at the National Bank,
yes.
and they took a loan from the National Bank to pay off the overdraft.
No, 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 no. What it
But you say they
was,
converted it
because
to a loan.
you're
So
right,
that's what it
because
did.
exactly. They couldn't pay off the overdraft, so they converted to a loan.
So they took a loan to pay off the overdraft. Right? I mean, to put it in terms that people understand.
Well,
If I
pretty
have,
much, yes, 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 yes.
yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. They took a loan to pay off the overdraft. Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
Okay, so that gives people a
So,
good
so,
sense of
so,
how the debt is structured.
yes,
No,
yes,
no, I was saying that
yes.
gives people a good
But,
idea of what the debt is. You have bonds, you have
oh,
treasury bills, and you have domestic loans. I guess that's loans they borrow from maybe Social Security,
yeah,
whoever else that
absolutely.
has money in
But,
Dominica that can lend them
but,
money.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
absolutely. But let me share something with our listeners as well, Tony. And I
Mm-hmm.
know it may sound like a lot to them, and I'm trying as best as possible to put it in bits and pieces that people could understand. And that's why whenever I present it like that, I always want to give a local scenario that we can relate to as individuals in our own lives when we're
Mm-hmm.
doing our own money management. So now bear in mind, and you said that earlier, our debt to GDP ratio um, last year, meaning that how much debt you earn in comparison to what your ability to sustain that debt was somewhere in the region of 104% to GDP. The last 3 years, if you take, for example, 2020, 21 and 21-22, 2020 it was 113.07. 2021 it was 107.21. And 2022, according to the IMF source that I have, is putting it at 98.53, right about 100%. Now, that same administration that we have, when they came into office, our debt to GDP ratio was 69.55%. Okay, in 2000. And since then, it has gone up. The only year that it remained in the 60 percentile was in 2008, in 2009. In 2008 it was 66, 2009 it was 62, 2010 it was 67, 2011 it was 68. From then on after, it just jacked up. And we know why it jacked
And
up.
that
We
is the
know what
same
happened.
period, and that's the same period of time where the CBI program really started to generate money.
Let,
So you have to ask ourselves what's going on. At the
so
same time that you're generating more money than you ever generated before, we are taking loans like we've never taken before.
so I'm glad you raised the CBI. Now here's some information to condense. As I said earlier, if the government borrows, the government is able to pay back that monies from their what one might say their trade policies, their fiscal policies. Okay, so agriculture is doing well. Agriculture contributes to GDP. Tourism is doing well. Businesses are functioning. Government can raise revenue. They can raise taxes, and out of that monies, that is what they use to pay salaries, pay this, pay their debts, their goods and services, fix hospitals, the whole nine yards. In 2021, end of 2021, for revenue purposes, government collected for taxes on domestic goods and consumption. That represented 34%. Economic citizen represented 32%. You know what I'm saying? 32. So they collected as much money from the economic citizenship as they collected on taxes on domestic goods and consumption. Taxes on international trade was 15%. Income tax was 11%. So, and other revenues was 8%. So right away, you can see for income tax purposes is one or two things. You don't have a lot of people working. If you don't have people working, you can't collect income tax. So they only collect a mere 11%. Now, the following year, which is interesting, look at the following year.
I have to take a commercial break after this last. Go ahead.
Okay. The following year, which was the year ending 30th June 2021, economic citizenship was 55%, Tony. 55% of revenue considered non-tax revenue. And taxes on domestic goods and consumption was only 21%. Remember, the year before it was 34. It's now only 21. Economic citizenship is 55. Taxes on international trade was 9%. Income tax was only 7%.
Okay, all right. So we're getting that picture. But let me take a quick break. When we come back,
oh my
when
God,
we come back, we're going to try to wrap this up, because I think folks are getting what we're asking about. You know, why it's important to ask those questions.
Yes.
But we go to a quick break, and folks, we'll be right back tonight. We're continuing to talk about the unaccountability of the revenue from the sales of passport, while at the same time the government is racking up hundreds of millions of dollars in debt every year. Where is that money? Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Presented by
The Dominica Association of Tampa Bay presents a cultural Christmas. Join us for this exciting event on December 2nd, 2023 from 6 p.m. until at 1801 North Lincoln Avenue, Tampa, Florida, 33607. Dress code is all white with a touch of madras. Enjoy singing Serenal and reminisce with Dominican folklore. We will be featuring for the first time our Shapo Pie competition. You may register to participate via our website www.datb.com, our Facebook page, or the link in our WhatsApp group. First prize, $200. Second prize, $150. Third prize, $100. Music will be provided by the Impulse Band and DJ Spice. A delicious spread of Dominican Christmas cuisine awaits you. Tickets only $50, and all tickets must be purchased in advance. Proceeds will go towards our scholarship program and other humanitarian needs in Dominica. For more information, call 813-297-1182. See you there.
Looking to promote your business, engage current customers, and reach new people? Well, look no further. From the basic presentation to a fully fledged advertisement, use your video ads to attract customers. At Man's Audiovisual Productions, we do just that. We produce videos for business and event promotions, product demo videos, animated explainer videos, fundraiser ads, and much, much more. Engage your clients and sell online. We customize the video to match your brand design. Guaranteed to play flawless on all devices, including smart TVs. Contact us at telephone number 203-690-4342 or 767-245-6238. Visit our website, mansaudiovisual.com, or email us at derekvideo@gmail.com.
The Dominica Association of Tampa Bay presents a cultural Christmas. Join us for this exciting event on December 2nd, 2023 from 6 p.m. until at 1801 North Lincoln Avenue, Tampa, Florida, 33607. Dress code is all white with a touch of madras. Enjoy singing Serenal and reminisce with Dominican folklore. We will be featuring for the first time our Shapo Pie competition. You may register to participate via our website www.datb.com, our Facebook page, or the link in our WhatsApp group. First prize, $200. Second prize, $150. Third prize, $100. Music will be provided by the Impulse Band and DJ Spice. A delicious spread of Dominican Christmas cuisine awaits you. Tickets only $50, and all tickets must be purchased in advance. Proceeds will go towards our scholarship program and other humanitarian needs in Dominica. For more information, call 813-297-1182. See you there.
All right, welcome back, folks. Welcome back, folks. I guess all roads lead to Tampa Bay on the 2nd of December for this cultural event. It sounds exciting. Register, get your apple pie. All right, so folks, tonight we're continuing to talk about Passportgate, the unaccounted revenue of the sale of Dominican passport, the unaccounted billions of dollars in revenue of sale of Dominican passport. And we're putting it in perspective because where is that money? Where is that money? And the same time that we're making billions of dollars, we are borrowing hundreds of millions of dollars. Right before the break, our guest tonight, Alvin Thomas, was breaking down some of the existing debt. And he was demonstrating to us what a significant portion of our revenue, the national revenue, is contributed by the sale of passports. 58% or something like what he said in that 1 year.
Absolutely. That was the year ending 30th June 2021.
Right.
It represented more than 50% of revenue.
If that doesn't give you Malva, not just you, because that is a significant and that we in something that we have no control over. We have no control over the CBI program. I mean, case in point, the European Union, Canada, all those places are making it more difficult for folks with Dominican passport to travel, which is the main attraction that the Dominican passport has. And so folks, this should give you cause to pause. I know we're discussing debt, but when that one comes in, that the revenue you get from the country, 58% of it comes from the CBI. What happens if tomorrow, God forbid, something were to happen, there were a terrorist attack, and some of the terrorists had Dominican passports, like they have, the terrorist attack they had in France and Europe and so on. And because of that, this government say, listen, Dominica, your passports are no longer welcome. You have to go through deep scrutiny, or whatever it is that makes our CBI program no longer attractive. How are we going to replace that more than 50% of the revenue of the country?
Yeah. You know what would happen, Tony? Again, let me use an analogy. I always like to use an analogy that we can relate to. You're owing the bank. You have a lot of debt owing the bank. You, as I said, you're making money, you're not paying the mortgage. So the loan goes sour. Like you say, CBI goes sour. The bank forecloses on the house. It takes the house away from you. So you're left in the cold. So when we cannot pay that debt, somebody is going to have to, something is going to give for it. And herein lies the problem, which we can do on another program, the Saudi Arabia. That's something else we
can jump into it right now because debt, Alvin. That's where I was going to go next. Because even with all of this debt, we're hearing announcements of additional debt that's being put on.
Well, that's the point I'm saying.
Additional folks, yeah.
If Saudi Arabia, okay, Saudi Arabia is not going to give a debt if there's not something in it for them. The bank, whether individually as well, the bank is not going to give you money for a mortgage if they don't see that they can recover their monies. Okay, the bank is in business to lend.
Yeah.
Okay, so similarly, Saudi Arabia is going to give you money, and they will say, well, if they can't pay us the money, what is it that we can get in return for our money? That's how Saudi Arabia is going to operate. And as I said, maybe we can on a program, because that is something I would like for us to deal with very
No,
extensively.
I mean, I
But
think we have
but let
a
me
few
just
minutes. We
segue.
can
Let me
thrash
just
out some
segue
of this.
slightly because I want to come back to the debt. There's some observations I want to share
We
with
have
your
only 10
listeners.
minutes left, by the way. Okay.
Wow, boy, that time flies by. The
Yeah.
government entered into what they call a joint statement, or I don't know if it might call it a memorandum or what they want to call it, with the Saudis, and it's a 16 point, 17 point recommended. Number 16, not number 16, number 14 of that reads as follows: support the announcement by Saudi Arabia about the establishment of an international water organization based in Riyadh, calling for further decisive global action. Let me read that again. Listen carefully. Support the announcement. So they're announcing by Saudi Arabia about the establishment of an international water organization based in Riyadh, calling for further decisive global action. Now, Tony, as I said, that requires a program of its own. Saudi Arabia does not have water. Saudi Arabia is in a water crisis today. Among all the islands that were there at CARICOM representing, with few exceptions, maybe Trinidad and maybe Guyana, Dominica is the only country there that have a water surplus. Okay? The only. You're familiar with that book, Deluge, by Dr. Alan Williams?
Deluge by Dr. Williams. Yeah.
Okay? Now, if you go to the bank as an individual and you borrow, and the bank has your mother or father title for land, and you take a mortgage and you can't pay the mortgage, or you can't pay the child you send to school, the bank is coming and take the land back because they have that. That's your asset. Saudi Arabia went into Arizona in the US. They went into Pakistan. They went several places and depleted these countries and these places' water resource. Saudi Arabia is not going to give you that kind of money and do expect something in return. They have now made themselves the water czar of the world. You hear me? The water czar of the world. And that is what is at stake with that debt that we are putting ourselves into. But listen to something once again, Tony. There's a document, and we might spend some time maybe on another program, called a Debt Management Performance Assessment. I referenced it a while back. It's an exercise undertaken by the World Bank Group. The last one done in Dominica was in 2018. On page 5 of that document, under the area where it speaks of the government debt, gives a sort of summary analysis, and it goes on to assess each debt performance indicators. Yeah, what they said. Okay, listen to what they said attentively. The joint IMF World Bank Debt Sustainability Analysis, which is what they refer to as a DSA, concluded in 2017, notes the increasing debt level and classifies Dominica at high risk of external debt stress. You hear me? They consider Dominica high risk of external debt stress.
And what year was that?
They did that in 2018. And when the World Bank did that, and that's when they considered them. It doesn't change. Trust me. It's gotten worse.
Doesn't change. No.
The analysis indicates ambitious fiscal consolidation needs to be implemented to set public and external debt on a sustainable path. The outlook of debt sustainability is subject to the risk of failure to advance with fiscal consolidation, unexpected drop in revenue, and further weakening of donor grants, as well as natural disaster, unquote. So the question
let me
remains.
just bring that into context, Alvin. Because if you get that report, obviously Saudi Arabia has that report.
Absolutely.
And in that rating, they still turn around and say, okay, here's a few $1 million you can have. It's as if, well, you have your home, your son is a drunkard.
Yes.
And he goes somewhere and say, he take your land paper without you know, and somebody
Go
say,
to the
oh
bank.
yes, $10,000, because the bank know he cannot pay, but we can come and get this nice spread of land that the family owns.
Yes.
And this is what folks are looking at and
So you
and
see
and,
you
and
see
not
the correlation
understanding.
between the debt
Yes,
and the country and your asset, because our water is our gold. Two things we
yes.
have in Dominica: we have people, land, and water,
Mm-hmm.
and we know what will happen. In what you call it, in Campbell area alone, you have around something like 9 waterfalls in that area. If Saudi Arabia comes and say, well, give us lists on that Campbell area and we'll take as much water as we want, okay? And that is going to pay back for the $100 million that we just borrowed. And that is why this is important, and we can't stop speaking about that. So you could see, you could put it into some context. Let me just read for you very quickly on page 17 of that same report. The World Bank was saying the government of Dominica has not conducted an in-house debt sustainability analysis during the last 6 years.
Imagine that.
So when they went there in 2018, they had not conducted an analysis in the last 6
Since
years.
2012.
Since 2012, they did what is called a debt assessment analysis. And there are certain variables and what they call debt performance indexes that they use. Out of a possibility of about 30 different index, ranging from a A to a D, reflects sound practices. C means minimum requirement. D means that no requirement has been met, and not applicable, NR not reporting. Dominica got 23 Ds.
These on the management,
23
on the
Ds.
administration of their debt.
23. They got only 4 Cs. There was 3 non-applicable and 0 NR. They had 1 A. The 1 A was for just reporting. They had a CRS system where they would just input some information. So they had that up to date. So they gave them an A. They got 23 Ds.
They probably needed that so they could access more debt.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, this report is mind-boggling. It tells you clearly that there has been a very bad and poor management of our debt, notwithstanding the fact that the debt keep increasing. So they're increasing debt, they're taking more money, they're increasing the debt. The debt is not being managed in a sustainable manner. I mean, I would really like at some point for us to go extensively in that. I know time doesn't permit right now, but the report is so damning. It tells
What's the
you
name of
how
that report,
callous.
Alvin? What is the name of that report?
It's called the Debt Management Performance Assessment, DEMPA
Debt
of Dominica,
Performance
dated.
Management Assessment. Is that
Yes,
available online?
yes, I can send you a copy. Yeah, it's available
Okay.
online too. And
Okay.
and Tony, I mean, you stay with your mouth open when you read that report. You can't believe. I mean, it talks about when we talk about, we don't have time to go into it, but there are certain legal requirements that need to be met in terms of government's borrowing as it relates to the Finance Audit Act and those various bits of legislation. It says there, the government legislation on debt and related transaction is fragmented. It goes on to say that due to a constrained cash position, government is often in breach of the limit. It goes on to say matters that should go to Parliament for Parliament approval did not go to Parliament. Government went ahead and incurred debt that needed the approval of Parliament that they failed to take to Parliament. It's in the report. It's in there.
Even when they have a majority and they can get approval from Parliament, that is, they choose not to.
Because the question of transparency comes to play.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If you're not borrowing for the right reason, or you can explain why you're borrowing, then you don't want nobody to know, even where you may have a majority. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it is important that we, the people, understand clearly what is happening. Because, like I said, if you and I, or those of us of our age, cannot pay for the debt, our children will end up having to pay for that debt. And it's a question of that. It's a bad management borrowing that is taking place. They are callous as it relates to the whole question of managing the debt and taking and doing what needs to be done. And I'm saying that we need to stay with our eyes open. And in light of that agreement, or whatever they might want to call it, that they enter into with Saudi Arabia, it clearly shows, Tony, that those guys have their eyes on our resource, our water.
On our
the
resources,
next war,
yes.
the next war that's going to take place in this world is going to be over water, you know. Saudi Arabia has trillions or billions of dollars in what they call a public investment fund, or whatever they refer to it. But as of now, that means nothing to them, you know, because they have no water. Water is life, as King Dai said in his song. Water is life. If you don't have water, you can't live. If you don't have water, a country cannot operate. And Saudi Arabia is in a serious problem as it relates to water, as well as China. And clearly, that $100 million is intended to come and take away our resource when we end up, because we won't be able to pay it. We are now at 1.6.
No.
We are at 1.6, and it's going to remain there.
So Alvin, let's wrap up.
Yeah, we can do that.
I don't think we can paint the picture any uglier than it is. You know, what we've seen is that from the reports that we have, the latest report that we have is as of end of June 2021. And at that time, the Dominican debt, the entire debt was $1.6 billion. And it's made up of bonds and treasury bonds and domestic borrowing, external borrowing, overdraft that the government has to take a loan from the same bank to pay the overdraft. There's all kinds of shenanigans. We went through and we showed how a huge part of our revenues from the CBI program. And the CBI program seemed to have been able to generate sufficient revenue that, let's say the government found itself in a tight spot for a couple of years, with responsible handling of the money, with accountability, there was enough money in that period of time that could have taken Dominica, like St. Kitts did, pay down their debt so that they could bring it to within manageable terms. And so, Alvin, I don't know if you have any information on that in terms of debt servicing. How much of the government, how much is the money the government spending on paying back on an annual basis? So as you give your closing remarks, if you have that I think would be interesting for people to understand how much money the government has put itself in that every year, every month it has to come up with to service all of these loans.
Well, I'm sure I can put my finger on that.
Okay,
but
so if you don't have your fingertips,
I will say to you that they do not do what is called debt sustainable analysis. They don't do debt analysis. So when you do an analysis, you could say, well, okay, I owe in X amount. I'm going to put so much on the side to pay. I'm going to, do X, Y, and Z. But in the absence of an analysis, I mean, not even the creditors, when they go to the creditors, they don't keep records. They don't keep records of in terms of, there's another damning statement that the document speaks about, It says there that government mainly borrows externally from multilateral institutions. That's page 22. And they have worked with traditionally, or from friendly foreign governments, I guess like the Saudi Arabians. The government approaches the creditors based on assessment of the availability of fund and area of speciality. However, listen to that. However, terms and conditions, including interest rate, currency, grace period, maturity offered by each potential creditor are not documented.
I mean, not documented.
Well, I'm reading for you from the report, Mr. Drygo.
But so how they get an A for documentation if none of the things are documented?
Listen, page 23. An external borrowing plan is not developed on an annual basis. So they don't have a plan developed on an annual basis. Listen. I'm telling you, we have to do a program just on that. Assessment of terms and conditions identifying the most beneficial and cost-effective borrowing from potential creditors are not undertaken. You hear what I'm saying to you? This is the World Bank group that did an assessment on our debt back in 2018, which is not too long ago. And they got a D for that, of course. They failed. And I'm telling you, this report is riddled, where these people are not managing the government revenue that our taxes, and they are using and running this debt in a very cavalier manner. Listen to what the IMF said to them just in closing. In April of this year, the IMF advises OECS to make prudent use of CBI revenue. Okay? That appeared in the St. Kitts Nevis vibes.com. And here's what the IMF says there. When asked what advice would be given to CBI dependent territories, taking the global mixed economic outlook into consideration, the IMF said they need to make prudent use of CBI revenue. Save them in a rainy day fund so that future spending to mitigate external shocks is derived from a stream of income rather than from depleting the fiscal buffer. CBI revenue not saved or used for immediate debt reduction can be cancelled towards common goods projects, such as disaster, resilient infrastructure, and energy transition to support climate change adaptation and promote sustainable economic development. The IMF also advised that a high level of transparency and accountability in CBI program is also essential for their sustainability, unquote. That's from the IMF.
So
I rest my case,
I mean,
Mr. Drygo.
You know what came to mind as you read that? Is a story I told before. Norway, their main revenue is petroleum, oil, and gas. And you know, oil is sort of volatile on the market. It fluctuates.
Yep.
So what was happening to them is that what was happening to them is that when oil is booming, everything is good. Their folks are enjoying life. And when oil is in a downturn, the economy busts and people suffer. And so you know what they did? The next time they had a boom, they took the cream of that revenue and they implemented what is called a sovereign fund. And they invested that money, that exactly what the IMF was advising, that the next time oil prices fell, they had a stream of revenue from those investments that they could use to buffer that shock, so that their citizens did not go through a hardship anymore because of an economic downturn. And so it's something exactly like that. And Norway has been so successful at it that they have consultants that they send to countries around the world for free to show them how they did it and how they can implement it themselves. They've been going around showing people how to do it. So that is what we're talking about, responsible government. You know, there are examples around the world. You don't even have to imagine it yourself. You just have to look around and see what other people are doing and doing it successfully, and they're willing to share the information with you. So, Alvin, I'm going to ask you to give some closing remarks as we wrap up this conversation. I think We achieved our objectives of tonight. We spoke about the level of debt that the country is in, the irresponsibility of the government. It wasn't an objective of ours, but that's what is the conclusion. That is the only conclusion that you can come to based on the information that we have. So go ahead and give some closing remarks.
Yeah, well, thank you, Tony. Just quickly though, in terms of a parallel to the Norway situation you outlined, Saudi Arabia did something kind of similar in a sense, because they have what is called a public investment fund, and that fund is sitting at about $1 trillion right now. It should be over $1 trillion by 2025, and they want it to be like $3 trillion by 2030. They want it to be at least $3 trillion. So, but what have happened over the years, like I said, they have depleted their water resource, and they have no water for agriculture, no water for other things. So as far as they're concerned now, this oil money and this oil revenue doesn't mean a thing to them if they have no water. So they're leveraging now that $1 trillion that they have around the globe and going now where that have water and take that water. And I'm saying that Dominicans need to be prepared. If it means lying down in the street and die for their country, they have to be prepared that we should not allow any foreign entities, be it governments, be it institutions, be it companies, to come in Dominica and take away our limited resource that we have. They have already,
yeah, for sure.
They have already damaged in our environment. All of those companies, they're doing all that quarrying and taking quarry work and dredging our rivers and that type of stuff. We have to keep our eyes on the prize. It's in the document that Skerrit signed just a week ago with Saudi Arabia. So I'm saying that this debt that we took of over $100 million with the Saudi Arabia, it's a plan for them to come and exploit our resource, our water. And I am warning, I am sounding the alarm that we should stay awake, that we should not allow that to happen. And it is my hope that the information that we shared, as I said, the information is right there, you know. If we do a little our Google search and we take the time to inform ourselves, we'll find it. And I'm always happy to share that with my people in Dominica so we can know where we're moving. The debt is unsustainable. At some of the program, Tony, we need to dig deeper into that document. I'm
into
telling
that
you.
report, and certainly we need to post the link for some folks to read it for themselves.
Yes, absolutely,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Didi Easter is saying this is racketeering, plain and simple.
Of course.
This conman's sole intention is to shake down investors and obtain funds for the same project in order to line their own pockets with no regard for the people of Dominica.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm saying the Dominican people must push back and fight back. Fight back. We must not let them come and take our resource from us. You know, in Ghana right now, 80% of Ghanaian gold in Africa is owned by foreign companies and people outside of Ghana. Only has about,
can you imagine that?
3% of their gold reserve, you know, or thereabout Ghana has. The bulk of it is owned by foreign entities and other foreigners, you know. So I hope that I have at least created an awareness in the minds of those who are listening tonight that we could stay guard. It is not a question of anything like overreacting. It's the reality. We have to understand what the geopolitics is like and understand where this world is heading to. And like they always say, small is beautiful. We are small. We are beautiful. We are gem. We have something that a lot of folks want. And we now must leverage it in a way to benefit us. We should not allow any outside influence to come and dictate how our resource should be used. That must be left with us. So, Tony, that's all I have.
Thank you.
To wish everybody to a happy
what comes to mind is Pakiti Yopoinamnikod, no?
Absolutely. We need to play that song every day, every morning, every night. Pakiti Yopoinamnikod, no. And the thing about it, you know, Tony, that song was recorded how many years ago? And it would be interesting to know what was the thinking in her mind then, Jean Lawrence, who did that with Souffle Mutai. What was she thinking when she made that song? To be honest, because as a writer or as a painter, you know, when you go in your studio to record a song or to do something, it comes across from some, you know, some maybe spiritual upliftment or something. It would be interesting to know that so many years ago she wrote that song, Pakite yo podom ni kodnu, and that is so relevant today. So relevant. But maybe we need to dip a little further into Saudi Arabia so people can understand too who we are dealing with. Because right now, if you ask me, Tony, I think Dominica is behaving like a prostitute. And you know, I hate to use that term, but we are prostituting ourselves as a country. Right now, we have China prostituting us and now Saudi Arabia prostituting us. So we're in bed now and
So
being prostituted by two.
So what we have to do is to get our two Johns to fight with each other.
Get what?
Our two Johns to fight with
What
each
did you
other.
say? Exactly. Exactly. And it's sad that we have gotten to that stage where we are up for sale and it's the highest bidder now. So I guess between Saudi Arabia and China, they'll determine who's the highest bidder and we're up for sale. And they'll just come in and just take control of our country. So Tony, that's all I have. Happy Thanksgiving, and as always, it's a pleasure to be able to share on this platform with you.
As usual, Alvin, you came prepared. You came with numbers. You came, you know, to present it, and the folks appreciate it because you'd say they can go find it for themselves, but a lot of times we don't have the time to do it, and so we bring it and we tell them that this is where it's from. We show them where we get the information so they can go verify and get more information, because what we have the time to present in an hour is just the tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely.
There's so much more to find out. So folks, you need to really inform yourself. And Alvin, you know, we continue to pay attention to Passportgate. I heard you trying to wish, I interrupted you, sorry about that, to wish folks happy Thanksgiving. So if you still want to do that, I'll let you do that. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to our many friends out here in the US where it's really observed Thanksgiving, to wish a happy Thanksgiving. But in general, like I think you said in your opening remarks, that at the end of the day, we have to be thankful for who we are, what we have. And I think the same can be said for Dominica. Although they're not observing Thanksgiving in Dominica, it's a US holiday, it's a US custom. But I think we in Dominica must be thankful for what we have, thankful for our waters, our rivers, our land, our people. And if you're thankful for that, you're going to defend it, you know, tooth and nail. You're not going to let anybody come and take it away from you. So I'm hoping that even those of us in Dominica will be thankful that you have a river still that you could go in and bathe, that you have water, and it's in abundance. We have it. Antigua,
fresh, you can drink it.
Antigua, a couple months, just last month, I think I heard in the news, is having a serious water problem. And the Prime Minister said he has to go to Trinidad and see if he can source water from Trinidad. Can you imagine that? Antigua is a tourist destination and they're having serious water problem.
But
there's no water to flush toilets, to bathe, to cook, to agriculture. I mean, we have to be thankful.
You want to skip over Dominic and go to Trinidad?
He knows why, maybe. But he didn't skip when they were sending the guy, what's his name, Chuck Ski. They didn't skip Dominica for Chuck Ski.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that's a shame, because that means that in the midst of all of these thirsty islands, Dominica hasn't been able to organize itself to sell a single bucket of water, you know.
And you work with Dawasco, so you work with Dawasco, Tony. So this is right under your alley, that you can speak to what our water we have and what we can do and what we can do. I can certainly speak to it,
Alvin, even more than you realize, because you know the water that Dominica sells externally is to the cruise ships. And in 1990, my first project as an engineer, project engineer, and then project manager, was the cruise ship Bertha de Cabrits. And in that project, we built a pipeline from Picard River to the Cabrits, and that's what they used to sell water to the cruise ships in Portsmouth.
Yep.
And then later on, when I was working at Dawasco, we did the facility that now supplies water to the cruise ships when they dock in Roseau. So I have first-hand information on it. And while I was at the WASCO, we had designed a project, the West Coast project from Dublin. When I designed that project, I had built into it a bulk water export to be able to sell water from Coolibistry.
Well,
that part
I
of the,
think
that part of the project was not implemented. So
yeah,
yes, so it's something that I have tremendous familiarity with in terms of Dominica's water, and the potential that there is, you know.
But I think we need to. I agree that we need to stay on that Passportgate. I agree entirely with you, but we need to tie it in the broader context of our water resource that is likely to go up, given what is written in that declaration of the Saudis. They want to be the water czar of the world. And mark you, Tony, excuse me, there are a number of institutions already in place to deal with the question of water, you know, both at a sub-regional level, OACS, at a regional level, CARICOM, and international level. But no, Saudi Arabia is saying they want to be the water czar of the world. And they want the headquarters in Saudi Arabia, and they don't have water. So how you want to rule a resource that you don't have? You wanted headquarters in Riyadh, and they're not saying they're in collaboration with or to work with the region, nothing like that. You know, it says that they announced, so they made the announcement now, and they say they're going to establish an establishment of an international water organization. They're making the establishment in Riyadh, calling for further decisive global action. You hear those words? Decisive global action. Do you hear those words, Tony? This matters, you know. When you put pen on paper and you write these things, it matters, okay?
And they're saying that they're seeking CARICOM support for that.
Yes.
You know?
So we have to start creating the consciousness in the minds of our people, especially Dominica, since we are the one that have the largest water resource, even as now as we speak, notwithstanding the fact that a number of our rivers have been compromised. Dominica, as we speak now, have at least 10 major rivers in Dominica. You know that, okay? And like I said, in the Campbell area alone, do you know a couple of years ago, Skerrit wanted to relocate everybody from Campbell because he said that area is dangerous, blah, 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 landslide and all of that. You remember that? He wanted to just take away people from Campbell and put them wherever he thinks is appropriate. Do you know in that same Campbell area, do your research, and those of us, you listening to us tonight, have almost 9 waterfalls in that little area alone they call Campbell. Okay? Water areas. So is that the plan he have to list, when he take out Dominicans from Campbell, to give the entire area of Campbell to the Saudi Arabian so they can come there and set up their thing and take our water and go with it? And 5-10 years down the road now, we have no water. We're depleted. Just as now they took all our arable land in Woodford area, give to the Chinese, dislocate 47 farmlands in the Woodford area, 150 acres of farmland. I understand that the Chinese now are planting everything down there. So this is one of our most fertile area. Dominica only have 30% of arable land available for farming. The 70% is forest. That's who we are. Okay? So we don't have a lot of land. But where do we have some of that, like you know, it's precious. So now we give the Chinese the north. They're doing what they want. And now we are planning behind our backs, most likely to give Saudi Arabia access to our water. And they're going to say, well, Saudi Arabia, there's a company named blah, blah, blah. And they come in to do some project with regards to the water, blah, blah, blah. And by the time you win, the Saudi Arabia have a 1900, 2000 year lease. Alibaba and the 45th. So we have to create that awareness now.
It fits the region. But
we have to create
Alvin,
that.
Alvin, let's leave it there. it was a good place to leave it. And as usual, I want to thank you for coming on. The listeners and our viewers, thank you for staying with us. Happy Thanksgiving again to everybody. We do this again on Wednesday. I think we will have maybe 2 or 3 more programs for the year, and then we'll give you a break to enjoy your Christmas and start back fresh in January. All right. But next week we will continue. We're going to stay with Passportgate until we get answers. I see there's somebody posted something about, seemed like it was a direct quote that says that they will not engage with economic terrorists. But he has to engage because the Dominican people, he owes them accountability and he owes them transparency, and that is what we're after. We don't necessarily want to engage with him. We want him to engage with the Dominican people and to answer the questions and to give accountability for the money. And so we're going to stay on Passportgate, and hopefully, if he doesn't watch it, Passportgate will get converted into a prison gate, because there's so much darkness and
Absolutely.
unaccountability that somebody has to have some consequences for that, because we are a people who are proud. And as soon as we wake up, we'll be asking questions and folks will have to give account and there will be consequences. So Passportgate will continue. Hashtag Passportgate. Hashtag Prison Gate. If you want to avoid the prison gate, then show the books, show the numbers. We're not going to give up. That's what we say. We're not going to give up. We need answers. So, folks, good night. And thank you to the team, this week in interview team. Those of you who participated and listened, thank you so much for that. And see you again next week, Wednesday. Have a good night.
All right. Okay, Tony.
Good night,
Thank you. All
Alvin.
the best.
Okay. Mm-hmm.